I always believed that betrayal had a distinct sound, that it cracked through the air like glass shattering on tile, a sharp finality you couldn't mistake. But in reality, it arrives slowly, disguised as routine in the quietest ways imaginable. In the way a phone is flipped face down on a table, the way a husband lingers in the shower a little longer than before, the way a smile doesn't reach his eyes anymore. My name is Camille and I was married to Jonathan for 12 years, most of them good, or so I thought. He was everything people would expect a devoted husband to be. Stable, ambitious, loving in the ways that men are taught to be, not overly expressive but steady, present. We had a modest but beautiful home in upstate New York, a daughter, Megan, who had just turned 9, and a dog named Brisket who slept curled at our feet every night. On the outside we were enviable. Inside I had convinced myself we were fine, that the quiet spells between us were normal, that exhaustion and routine explained his distance, that people grew apart and it didn't always mean they were lost. I noticed the signs, of course. I'm not naive, but I dismissed them like so many women do. The sudden increase in late meetings, the password change on his phone, the subtle way he pulled away when I reached for his hand at dinner. Love, or perhaps the illusion of it, makes you lie to yourself before anyone else gets the chance. But the unraveling began truly on a Tuesday night, when Jonathan fell asleep on the couch with his phone wedged beneath a cushion. He never did that, he guarded that thing like it held nuclear codes. I wasn't snooping, not exactly, just curious when it buzzed softly at midnight, and my name wasn't the one lighting up the screen. It was a notification from an app I'd never seen, Telegram, and the message preview read, "Can't wait to feel you again." Last night was everything. My body went cold. My hands moved before my brain did, unlocking the phone with the old passcode he must have forgotten to change. What I found was a rabbit hole into a life I didn't recognize. Dozens of saved photos, messages, hotel receipts, cash transfers, all linked to a name I didn't know. Amber. She was 23. I would later discover she was a fitness influencer who had less in common with me than a woman in another universe. Her Instagram was full of crop tops, motivational quotes, and mirror selfies in boutique gyms. She referred to him as Jay. They had been together, according to their messages, for almost a year. A year. A whole year of lying to my face, of coming home from her bed to sleep in mine. I didn't scream. I didn't cry. Not at first. I just sat there reading everything, every word of every thread, like a forensic investigator detached, cataloging evidence. He had told her he was separated, that I was controlling, that he was only staying for Megan, that I wouldn't let go. Lies layered on lies. And what struck me most wasn't the cheating. It was the intimacy, the tenderness. He wrote her poetry. He remembered her coffee order. He told her things he never told me. The next morning I pretended everything was normal. I kissed him on the cheek, packed Megan's lunch, and waited until he left for work to begin unraveling the rest. I dug through old receipts, synced his iCloud, found a second phone hidden in his briefcase's lining. This wasn't an affair. This was a parallel life. He had rented an apartment in the city under a fake name. He had a second bank account. There were photos of them at family events, hers not mine, where he smiled like I hadn't seen in years. And all the while I cooked his meals. I washed his shirts. I lay next to him thinking we were just in a rough patch. The rage didn't come until days later, like a storm cloud that refused to burst. I didn't confront him right away. I wanted to know everything first. I wanted to strip every excuse from his arsenal. When I finally did, it wasn't in tears. It was clinical, deliberate. I printed out screenshots, laid them on the table like crime scene photos, and said, "Tell me who she is." His face went pale. He didn't deny it. Didn't even try. Just ran a hand through his hair and said, "I didn't want you to find out like this." As if there was a right way for your world to collapse. As if a betrayal could be softened by planning. He cried eventually. Beck told me he loved me. Then he said the worst thing a man can say after ruining your life. "You pushed me away." As if I carved the road to her bed. As if his lies were my fault. I left that night, took Megan and stayed with my sister in Connecticut. Told her only the broad strokes. Told Megan we were taking a vacation. The legal proceedings came next. Divorce, custody, property division. He tried to save face. Tried to offer me money and keep the house. But I didn't want things. I wanted truth. I wanted to reclaim the woman who once trusted her own intuition. Amber messaged me too. She didn't know, or at least claimed she didn't. She said he told her I was abusive, that he was trapped, that she was helping him heal. I didn't reply. What could I say? We were both played. He got the lies with flowers. I got them with dishes in the sink. I suppose I could have confronted her, screamed at her, cursed her out, but women are not each other's enemies. We are reflections in the same broken mirror. In the end, Jonathan didn't end up with her either. She moved on after discovering the truth. So did I, but not to another man. To myself. I took classes. Started therapy. I stopped apologizing for being too serious, too much. I wasn't too much. I was just too real for someone who needed fantasy to feel whole. The hardest part wasn't the betrayal. It was the grief for a life I thought I had. The person I thought I married. The history we shared. But memory is a slippery thing. And sometimes when the truth finally rises, you realize it had been whispering all along. You just didn't want to hear it. Today, I live in a small cottage by the lake with Megan and Brisket. The silence is different now. Not the tense quiet of unspoken lies, but the gentle hush of peace. Megan is thriving. I'm healing. And Jonathan? I don't know, he's a chapter I've closed. A lesson I've learned. A ghost in the house I built from my own strength. I'm not bitter. I'm not broken. I'm just awake now, and I will never sleep through my own life again. After that first shattering discovery, the days blurred into one another, each morning bringing a fresh wave of exhaustion that wasn't physical but mental, the kind that roots itself deep inside your chest and won't let go, that silent heaviness you carry even when you smile or try to act normal. I found myself drifting through our home, now hollow and unfamiliar, touching objects that had once been part of our life together but now felt like evidence of a crime scene, the framed photo of our wedding day on the mantel, the chipped coffee mugs he used to frown at because they weren't symmetrical, Megan's drawings pinned to the fridge, little happy pictures I couldn't look at without my throat tightening, and the night Jonathan called from work, pretending everything was fine. I let the phone slip from my hands, barely able to breathe as the lie hung between us like thick smoke, suffocating and inescapable. I spent hours scrolling through the endless threads between him and Amber, watching their conversations evolve from casual flirting to secret plans, to declarations of love, all behind my back as I was folding laundry, brushing Megan's hair, fixing dinner, playing the part of the wife, the mother, the unsuspecting. His words to her were so tender, so intimate, and it broke something inside me to realize that the man who held my hand and whispered promises to me had been building a different world in the shadows. One where I didn't exist, where I was erased in favor of someone younger, prettier, easier, someone he could craft a new life with without the baggage of years and shared history. I began to watch him more closely, the way he answered his phone in another room, the way his eyes darted away when I asked simple questions, the way his cologne seemed different, stronger, unfamiliar, and one afternoon, I found the spare key to the apartment he had rented in the city tucked inside a book he'd been reading, a book I didn't recognize, with an address scrawled on a slip of paper hidden in the spine. The air around me felt heavier every time I thought about opening that door, stepping into the unknown part of his life, but my curiosity was a hungry beast I couldn't tame, and so I drove through rush-hour traffic to that anonymous building, my heart pounding like a warning drum, palms sweaty, the city noise a harsh contrast to the quiet town we called home. The apartment was small, modern, with evidence of their time together scattered everywhere. Lipstick stains on a glass, half-drunk wine bottles, a scarf that smelled faintly of Amber's shampoo, and a tablet open on the coffee table showing photos of them laughing on a beach vacation I'd never known about. I felt rage, sorrow, confusion all at once, a cyclone of emotions that left me shaking and trembling, and in that moment, I realized that Jonathan had lived a double life, not just physically but emotionally, mentally, and I was a ghost in his narrative, a footnote in his story, a woman who had loved him fiercely and been discarded without a word. Returning home, I confronted him with the evidence laid bare between us, and though he tried to explain, to justify, to beg for forgiveness, his words felt hollow, like the echo of a man who had lost himself to desire and deception, and as he spoke of Amber, his soulmate, I saw a version of him I didn't know. A man addicted to the thrill of a new beginning, a younger woman's gaze, the illusion of freedom, while I stood shattered, questioning every memory, every touch, every promise we'd made. The nights became battles of silence and tears, our daughter caught in the middle of a crumbling family, her innocent questions about why daddy seemed sad or why mommy cried piercing my heart, and I found myself lying awake, wondering how to protect her from the truth without losing her trust, wondering if I could ever rebuild what had been broken, or if some cracks run so deep they shatter the foundation entirely. Legal meetings followed, a blur of cold faces, papers signed and unsigned, custody arrangements, lawyers speaking in terms too clinical for the mess of emotions inside me, and through it all, I clung to Megan as my anchor, my reason to survive, to fight for a new life that wasn't defined by Jonathan's betrayals. I started therapy. Not because I wanted to fix him or understand him, but to salvage myself, to learn how to trust my own heart again, to find strength in vulnerability and discover that healing was not linear but a spiral that took you down dark paths before bringing you back into the light. Slowly, I began to rediscover who I was outside the shadow of a husband's lies. A woman who laughed with friends, who chased dreams long buried, who found joy in small moments like sunrise walks with Brisket, reading novels. With Megan curled in my lap, the quiet satisfaction of a garden blooming despite the winter that had once threatened to consume me. Months passed and Amber faded from the picture as suddenly as she had appeared, the woman who had been the other half of Jonathan's double life moving on, leaving behind a trail of heartbreak and shattered illusions, and me standing stronger, wiser, no longer a victim but a survivor, a woman reborn from the ashes of deceit, who learned that sometimes the most devastating losses are the ones that lead to the deepest growth, and that in the end the most important love story is the one you write with yourself. In the months that followed, life became a complicated dance between holding on and letting go, the sharp sting of betrayal slowly dulling into a persistent ache that lingered just beneath the surface, a constant reminder of what had been lost and what might still be reclaimed. I found myself returning to the small rituals I had abandoned during the storm, making coffee exactly the way I liked it, the aroma filling the quiet kitchen before the house stirred awake, the slow unfolding of morning light across the hardwood floors, the feel of Megan's soft hand slipping into mine on our walks through the park, her laughter echoing as we watched squirrels chase one another up ancient oaks, moments of normalcy that grounded me, tethering me to the world outside the wreckage of my marriage. Therapy sessions became both refuge and reckoning, where I untangled the knots of anger, guilt and shame, where I learned that none of this was my fault. That Jonathan's deception was a reflection of his own failings, not a mirror of my worth, and gradually the fog of self-doubt lifted just enough to let hope seep in, fragile but real. On quiet evenings, I'd stare at the empty side of the bed where Jonathan used to lie, feeling the ghost of his absence like a physical presence, and instead of letting despair swallow me, I spoke aloud to the silence, promising myself that I would rise from this, that I would build a life unshackled from lies, that Megan would know a mother who loved fiercely and fearlessly, even if the man who promised forever had broken that vow. One afternoon, a letter arrived from Jonathan's lawyer. Terms for the final settlement, custody arrangements, visitation rights. And though my heart wanted to scream at the injustice, my voice was calm, steady, refusing to be dragged back into the chaos he had created. I realized that forgiveness wouldn't come easily, that trust might never fully return, but in that moment I made a choice. To reclaim my story, to write new chapters defined by resilience rather than heartbreak. And so I began to enroll in classes I'd dreamed of before life had been consumed by us. Exploring photography and creative writing, pouring my emotions into images and words, discovering talents I had buried beneath the weight of years of marriage and motherhood. Friends, some old and some new, became my lifelines, their steady presence and unconditional support reminding me that I was not alone, that healing is a community effort. And together we celebrated small victories. An art show where my photos hung on the wall, a weekend getaway where Megan and I laughed without looking over our shoulders, the first date I went on after a year of solitude, a tentative step toward rediscovering love on my own terms. Jonathan occasionally appeared in Megan's life, awkward and uncertain, trying to rebuild a connection fractured by lies, and though part of me wanted to hate him forever, I found a strange compassion for the man who had been flawed, human, lost. With time, those visits became less painful, a testament to the complex web of family and forgiveness, even if the wounds ran deep. Late at night, when the house was silent and the weight of the past threatened to creep back, I'd remind myself that the story wasn't over, that every scar was a mark of survival, that I had emerged from the darkness not broken but stronger. A woman who had faced the unbearable and chosen to keep moving forward. A mother who would teach Megan the power of truth and courage, and above all, a soul who had found peace not in the perfection of a fairy tale but in the raw, beautiful imperfection of real life. And so I breathed in deeply, feeling the air fill my lungs with new possibility, stepping into the future one shaky but determined step at a time, knowing that the love I truly needed was waiting within myself all along. The rhythm of our new life settled into a delicate balance, one where the sharp edges of pain softened just enough for joy to peek through, and each day felt like a small victory against the darkness that had once threatened to consume us. Megan became my beacon, her bright spirit a reminder of the future I needed to build. And as we shared late-night talks under blankets, whispering secrets and dreams, I saw in her eyes the resilience I was striving to embody, the strength to heal and to hope. Even when the world felt fragile and uncertain, co-parenting with Jonathan was a labyrinth of awkward encounters and half-truths, but I kept my resolve, setting boundaries with quiet firmness, determined that Megan's well-being was the only priority, that she deserved to see both her parents but never at the expense of her innocence or sense of safety. The apartment I rented for the three of us became a sanctuary of our own making, walls decorated with Megan's artwork and my photographs, furniture collected slowly with intention, a space filled with the scent of lavender and fresh coffee, where laughter replaced silence, and the nights weren't haunted by secrets but filled with books and bedtime stories and soft lullabies that wrapped us in comfort. Friendships deepened as I opened up about the betrayal, finding in others who had endured similar wounds a community that lifted me up, where vulnerability was met with understanding rather than judgment, and I learned to trust. Again, not only others but myself, to believe that love could be honest, kind, and real. The sting of Jonathan's absence on holidays and birthdays was sharp, a reminder of what we had lost, but Megan and I created our own rituals. Morning pancakes with strawberries and whipped cream, handmade cards filled with promises of love and hope, evenings spent dancing in the living room to old records, the kind of moments that stitch broken hearts back together one smile at a time. And as seasons changed, so did I, shedding the bitterness that once consumed me, embracing forgiveness not as forgetting but as freedom, the choice to no longer carry the weight of his betrayal as my own burden, understanding that my worth was not defined by his choices but by the love I gave and the life I dared to rebuild. Late one spring afternoon, while walking Megan to school, the golden light catching her curls just so, I felt a surge of gratitude for the journey, harsh as it had been, because it had led me here, to a place where I could stand tall, where my heart, though scarred, beat stronger and more fiercely than ever. And as I watched her run ahead, her laughter trailing behind like a song, I knew that I was no longer the woman defined by the shadows of Jonathan's double life but a mother, a survivor, a woman reborn, writing a new story, one of hope, love, and unbreakable strength from the ashes of betrayal.